Our next custom provider pattern is the use factory, which is a very common and helpful pattern you will surely use many times in your application. The use factory syntax allows us to create providers dynamically, which can be extremely useful if you need to base the provider's value on various other dependencies, values, etc. The value returned from the factory function is what will be used by the provider token. What makes these factory functions so special is that they themselves can inject other providers needed to compute the returning result. Let's look at the coffee brands provider we used in our previous lesson and convert it to use factory. Let's start out by making it a function that simply returns the array of strings we previously had. For testing purposes, let's make sure we still have that console log in our coffee service here so we can make sure it's working properly. Let's open up our terminal with our application running, and we should see our array of strings still show up. Pretty straightforward, but we haven't taken full advantage of factory providers yet. Let's look at a more realistic example and inject some providers into it. First, let's define a random provider for illustration purposes, and make sure to register it as a provider. Now, let's update our existing coffee brands provider to use the coffee brands factory. In this code, we can see that we are using a new property for our providers called inject. Inject takes in an array of providers itself. These providers get passed into our use factory function, and we can use them however we would like. This is just demonstration code, of course, but you can see we have a coffee brands factory that we are injecting into our use factory function and calling a method on it. Although this is all pseudocode, what's important here is just knowing that you can use your dependencies here, doing whatever type of business logic you need, letting you return whatever values you want for this provider.